What's up, people? In this video, we are going to take a look at this video right here. Somebody sent me this link. The food we were born to eat, John Mcdougal at TedX Fremont. This guy speaks English, right? I don't need these subtitles. So I don't know anything about this. I think I've heard of Mcdougal, the Mcdougal diet. I guess the guy looks okay physically. Anyway, we're gonna watch this now. If you guys have any other recommendations for videos or YouTubers you want me to watch, leave me a comment in the comment section.
Starch. Yeah, it's starch, you know, rice, corn, potatoes, sweet potatoes.
I've seen this guy before. I've seen a video of him. This guy's old school. Didn't recognize him until just now. And from what I recall, like actually I remember watching a video of his when I was in health class in high school, like when I was 17. I'm fucking 35. Okay, so like dude's been around for a while. Don't know anything about him other than that. I just wanted to like put that out there. Now let's actually just watch this.
It's starch that has healed thousands of my patients. Like for example,
Okay.
a young lady from the Bay Area had deforming rheumatoid arthritis, to the point where she couldn't catch her mom. And Julia Baker decided at 17 years old she was going to change her diet. She was going to give up the cheese and the meat and the oil and switch to a diet based upon rice, corn, and potatoes. And it took about 7 days before she started getting better. Or from Sacramento, Robert Cross used to work in the Attorney General's office. He got terrible chest pains, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, overweight. Went to his doctor for a solution. Quickly ended up in front of the cardiologist, who recommended what? Heart surgery. He said, no, I've got a better idea. And he switched to a starch-based diet. Lost 60 pounds, dropped his cholesterol from 300 to 150, cleaned out his arteries. Or Deb Tisak from Chicago. Had terrible multiple sclerosis. Actually fell down, stayed down for a month, couldn't get up. Her doctor told her she'd be in a wheelchair in 5 years and likely bedridden or dead in 10. She says, I'm not going to do that. So what she did is she switched to starch. Yeah, starch. I'm Dr. John Mcdougal. I've been in this business for 44 years. And I'm the luckiest doctor in the world because my patients get well. It started out, I have to tell you, it started out by a bit of an accident. I was in Michigan, to Hawaii, my internship back in 1972. I stayed on Oahu for a year, practiced just general internal medicine or internship type of program. And then after a year, I fell in love with Hawaii and I didn't want to leave. So I took a job on the Big Island as a plantation doctor. And there I worked as a general doctor for 3 years. I caught babies, I pronounced people dead, I did brain surgery in the middle of the night. But I learned everything that I know today during those 3 years from my patients. First thing I learned is that I wasn't a very good doctor. I thought I was going to make all these miraculous cures. I mean, I watched Ben Casey, Dr. Kildare, Marcus Welby. I knew what a real doctor did. And I went into this general practice on the Big Island of Hawaii, and I started taking care of these 5,000 sugar plantation patients. And I gave them the best pills I could find. Sent them off to the best surgeons in Honolulu. And they wouldn't get well. They just stayed fat and sick. I thought it was because I was a bad doctor. I realized my limitations as a physician during those 3 years. I was humbled. The second thing that I learned from my patients, and it was a unique setting on the Big Island of Hawaii and the sugar plantation, is I learned how to eat because I was taking care of 5,000 people who ate differently. I was taking care of first, second, third, and fourth generation Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese, and Koreans. Now, my first generation, they learned about how to eat when they were little kids in their native land of the Philippines, Japan, China, Korea. They learned a diet of rice and vegetables. And then they had the fortune of moving to the Big Island to start new families, a new life. But with them, they took their original diet, and they continued to eat rice and vegetables. The kids, who were influenced a little bit by the Western diet, they started to change. And by the time you got to the grandkids, you were looking at people who ate the traditional Western diet. Now, realize these are people with the same genetics, same kind of work for over 100 years on the sugar plantation. Yet before my eyes as a doctor, what I saw is I saw people living on rice and vegetables, no dairy, just a little bit of meat at most, trim, healthy, hearty people, no MS, no arthritis, no diabetes, no heart disease in that first generation living on those traditional diets. And then I watched the second generation get a little fatter and sicker as they abandoned starch. And the third generation, which feared starch, rice, corn, potatoes, and took on meat and dairy in their diet and oils, they got fat and sick just like every other American.
So a few things. Let's just talk about that last thing that he said. He's saying, I worked on this plantation, I was a doctor, I saw differences. I noticed the difference between first, second, and third generation. First generation ate a traditional diet from where they were from. And then as the second and third generations progressed, they ate more and more similar to a Western diet. And therefore I noticed and his conclusion from those premises are that the decrease in health is a result of them abandoning starch. Okay, which I'm gonna say that's one, like that's a stretch. Okay, like straight up. And okay, so that's a stretch is my initial reaction to that, because in my opinion, it doesn't account for other potential variables. Like, is it that you abandoned starch, or is that you ate too many processed foods that don't have any nutritional content, right? And like, by the way, like rice and vegetables don't have much nutritional value either, right? Like rice is not, like there's not a lot of like, there's just not much to it, right? There's nothing in it, you know what I mean? In vegetables, like, I guess some of them are like, they have like garlic and onions, fine, that has like good shit in it for sure. Like some kind of mushrooms maybe. And they all have like a little bit of good stuff, but not anything close to like what meat has. So like, I think the issue here is less that they abandoned starch and more that they just like ate a lot too much processed shit and weren't getting like any nutrients at all. We're probably just like binging on these like very dopamine spiky foods. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I'm getting a real like, and the dude's a professional speaker, he's been in the game for 40 years or something. I'm getting a very like salesman vibe from this, and I'm a fucking salesman. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like I background in sales, like I know the drill, you know what I mean? Like, we're all trying to sell, we're all trying to make money, but this is like, I feel like I'm watching, like, what am I gonna get pitched on? Like, how much is it? You know what I mean? In and of itself, that's not a bad thing. And like, let me wrap all of that in the like casing of, it's not stupid if it works. If this guy actually can produce real results with people and improve their health and like work these miracles as a result of eating starch, okay, great, wonderful. Like, I'll look into it more, I guess. And I guess some starch is good. Like, I love oatmeal. I think oatmeal's amazing. I think if you eat, is rye a starch? Is he considering that a starch? Like rye bread? That can be good. Rye is a good like thing to eat. Potatoes I think are good. So like, I think the issue here is that by like saying like starch, right? By saying that, people are, I think, going to get the wrong idea and be like, oh, starch is good? Well, the like ice cream cone that I had, the cone is made out of bread, and that's a starch, so then it's good because I ate the ice cream cone, right? Or like, well, Wonder Bread is a starch, and it's only $1, so like, it's healthy food, and it's only $1. It's like, I think you need to be a little bit more specific in terms of what you say, and he may do that later, so let's just go on.
Well, after 3 years, I had to leave as a general practitioner. I went back to Oahu to become a board-certified internist. And I spent the next 2 years studying in the scientific library, in the medical library, next to Queens Medical Center, to see whether anybody else had made this observation, that people who live on starch, rice, corn, potatoes, sweet potatoes, are thin, healthy, hearty, young-looking, not just in the world today, but throughout history, and that will switch to a well-balanced diet, the rich American diet, with lots of protein and calcium and other of these wonderful nutrients, that they got fat and sick. And what I found out was that scientists over the previous 100 years had made this observation.
I'm sorry, I just have to say something about that. It's like, that's like me saying, I don't know, whatever. You're taking a large, you're saying this thing, okay, that has thousands of variables, okay? This thing with thousands of variables leads to this other thing, this one specific condition, let's say. And this other thing, also with thousands of variables, leads to a different specific condition. Therefore, this one variable that differs from this variable is the answer, right? That's why this leads to this, and that's why this leads to this. Did I explain that right? Come on, dog, like, really? So what I would say to that is like, so basically he's saying the American diet, which is high in calcium and protein, makes people fat and out of shape and have poor health. And the, let's say, like traditional Asian diet, which is mainly rice and vegetables, so he says, people are like thinner and healthier over there. Therefore, like, people who like eat the American diet are fat, and people with the traditional Asian diet are not fat. So like, what I would say to that is like, well, what other variables are in the American diet that might lead to somebody being like really fat and out of shape? Maybe all of the like processed delicious snacks that we have, like, hello. And maybe like, the economy is very business and corporation friendly, which like as a food business, you are incentivized to get people to buy your products. So if you're able to like examine the exact substances that you can put in food to make, to like, I hate this word, but like to trigger that release of chemicals in your mind that you feel good when you eat that food. All you have to do is make a lot of food with those chemicals, with those substances, and you wrap it in colorful packaging, you do your marketing, you do your advertising, and eventually over a long enough time, you get more and more customers and you get them more and more hooked on the food. Okay, and this is not like from I don't know if it's from a bad place. Like, these companies are trying to make money. Everyone's trying to make money. You know what I mean? Like this, they're promoting food that'll make you fat and unhealthy. It's not good ethically, I guess, but like it's not against the law, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, so anyway, a bit of a stretch, Dr. Mcdougal.
In fact, it goes further back than that. That was important because that told me right there and then that getting older didn't mean getting fat and sick. It didn't have to be that way. But as I read in the science, I discovered something else that was really profound, and I'm sure it's going to be easy for you to understand. When you stop doing things that make people sick, they get well. And so if I had figured out that eating a well-balanced diet with lots of meat and dairy made people sick, then the only next clue I needed was the idea that I could be a miracle doctor. I could fulfill what I wanted to do as a physician, which is to help other people by applying this very simple principle. And that is to feed people a diet for human beings. Yeah, there is a diet for people. I know you might be surprised considering the variety that everybody eats, but there is a diet for human beings. And each and every one of you ought to be able to answer that question for yourself, for your spouses, for your children, for your friends. You should be able to have that answer. When somebody says, well, what do human beings eat? I mean, after all, you know what a cat eats, right? Yeah, cats are carnivores. And horses, they have a diet. And parrots have a diet. You never take and feed your parrot meat or your cat nuts and seeds. So every animal must have a diet. What is the diet for human beings? Well, history would tell us what that is. When you look back through history, and you can go back 2.5 million years, and you see that the bulk of human beings have lived on starch-based diets. We have evidence from 44,000 years ago that said that the Neanderthals lived on starches. And from 30,000 years ago, we have population studies in Europe that talk about people living on starch-based diets. I mean, that's pre-agriculture, so they say.
So a guy like this, right, like has a lot of power, okay? Because when you're a doctor, you automatically have instant credibility with most of the population, right? You can say anything essentially, and if you're a doctor, people are more than likely to at least like hear you out. You know what I mean? As opposed to if you're just like let's take snake diet guy for example, random example, right? But like if you're some like, no offense to him, I love him, he's amazing, like huge, like we're not worthy kind of thing, right? But like, let's call it what it is. Like if you're some like raving, ranting, like Canadian foul-mouthed like personal trainer, and you say something about health, okay, your words are not going to carry the same weight as this like doctor who's been in the game for 40 years. You know what I mean? It's like got his like suit, he's doing a TEDx talk. Like it's just not like, overall people are more likely to take this guy's opinion or what he says as fact over somebody like that, let's just say. That said, I think that if you are like promoting something like this, like for example, what did he say? The human beings have eaten a starch-based diet for most of their existence, right? Okay, true. Let's just say, I'm not going to look it up, but I'm assuming if this guy is saying that in his TEDx talk, it's something that could be easily disproven. So he's going to do the research and whatever, find some like source that says it's true. Fine, it's true. Does that mean it's better? No, it means that's what they did, right? Like people do something for a long time. Does that mean it's better? No. Like in my opinion, my personal judgment as to whether or not something is good is the result after a strenuous test. Okay, now that said, I don't think there's anything wrong with starch. I think starch is great. I think my personal strenuous test, which is how well do you perform athletically and how do you feel and how do you look, say that's one test, but the real main test, I guess, out of those three is how do you perform, okay? They're all kind of related, but really how do you perform is kind of the most intense one, and in my opinion, therefore, the most valid one, because you're gonna have the most drastic difference in results. That said, I think that you can perform amazingly on starch. I won't shut up about oatmeal. And anybody who's trying to lose weight, I used to say this before I started recommending raw meat, but now that I think about it, I'm probably gonna start recommending this more. If somebody who's fat, simple, if you're fat and you don't want to lose weight, eat oatmeal. Done. Like, replace one, eat oatmeal every day for 30 days, you will fucking drop a ton of weight. Like, wow. Like, insane amounts of weight. Like, it's amazing. It's great. It's wonderful. Like, period. But like, to draw all of these other inferences from it and say like, well, humans have been eating starch for bazillions of years and that's what we mainly did, so therefore it's the human diet. Don't question me, I'm a doctor. It's like, and the reason I guess that I'm saying it like this is because most people don't exercise. Most people aren't going to put themselves through the test. So the actual test that they have, like how they're basing their decisions, and this is really a problem. This is why people don't know anything about health and fitness. They base their decisions based on things like this. Like, well, I heard a doctor one time on a TedX talk, which adds additional credibility. Well, it's TedX, so not really. Whatever. Anyway, I heard a doctor on TedX who's been in the game for 40 years say this. Therefore, it's more likely to be true than Snake Diet Guy, for example, right?
That's pre-civilization, so they say. But how about over the last 10, 12, 14,000 years? We have really evidence. We have written evidence about what people ate. And if you're a person of history, you know what people ate. Throughout human history, all large, successful populations of people have obtained the bulk of their calories from starch. I'm sure lots of examples are popping in your mind. You're thinking about the Aztecs and Mayans, the people of corn. And if you go a little bit further south, and you look at the Incas, they lived on potatoes, except when they went to battle, and then they switched to quinoa. And if you go to the Middle East, these people are from the bread baskets of the world. In Asia, I think most people can relate to the rice-based diets. And think about these people. Trim, hardy, healthy, strong warriors. The diet of human beings has been traditionally and always will be a diet based on starch with the addition of fruits and vegetables.
Like Aztecs and Mayans, like who was thinking about them? Like, were any of you? Like, what about the Romans and the Greeks? Like, that's what I was thinking. I was like, he's going to mention the Romans and the Greeks, right? Did they eat a lot of starch? I don't know. I have no idea. And like, what else did he say? Like Asian people or something? No offense to any Asian people. Like, I've been fucking living in Asia for like 2 years. I love it here. But generally, like, Asian people are short, and you could make the argument that that is because they are somewhat deficient in nutrients as a result of only eating vegetables and starch, or vegetables and starch, rice. I will say, however, that in Thailand here, I do notice a lot of people with like amazing teeth. Like, oh my God, these people, they call Thailand the land of smiles, but like, sometimes you see somebody smile and you're like, oh my God, what a beautiful person. Even if they're not like good looking, right? You just like, their smile's like from here to here, and it's like fucking like whiter than like God. It's like, oh my God, like, what am I looking at here? Like some random policeman like smiles at you, like, oh my God, like, give me your teeth. So like a bit of a stretch, doctor, but let's say that's true. Let's just say.
What happened is people became more effective at gathering calories, and the richer people in every society, what happened to them is they no longer had to eat the starches. They could instead eat the animals that were eating the starches. And as a result, there was a certain segment of the population throughout all of human history that became wealthier than the rest of the people. And these people could eat meat, pheasant, or pigs, or other kinds of animals, and put the starches as side dishes. You have the pharaohs and the kings and the priests and the priestesses of 3,500 years ago who were described as fat. The examination of their bodies 3,500 years later shows terrible atherosclerosis, gallbladder disease, and all kinds of other problems of Western civilization. Well, we had a few kings and queens back then. And then as time went on, more and more people were able to eat like kings and queens. You recall King Henry VIII and his court. What they look like? Americans. That's what they look like. And then as time went on, we became more efficient at gathering food. People became wealthier. We had the Industrial Revolution in its midst 150 years ago, and we had the discovery of fossil fuel. And as a consequence, almost everybody in Western society could eat like kings and queens. And what's the result? Can't you see it? Can't you see it? When people abandon their starch-based diets of rice and corn and potatoes with the addition of fruits and vegetables, instead they eat the food of royalty. As people do in Western society, what would you expect? That you'd have people that look like kings and queens and are sick with diabetes and heart disease and cancer and multiple sclerosis. Anyway, that's the setting of the country today. The statistics are very familiar to you, I'm sure. We live in a society where people are fat and sick, and not just the adults, but the children too. 30% of the kids are overweight. Not only are they overweight, but deep under their skin is a lot of sickness. These kids have atherosclerosis.
So a few things. Number one, I don't imagine that, like, let's say this example of like kings and queens and royalty and stuff like that. I've never heard that they like dug up their bodies and found that they had like all these diseases. Let's take that at face value and say it's true. I'm always thinking to myself, what else could be the reason for this other than this guy who clearly has something to gain from what he's like from his recommendations, right? Just thinking, spitballing here, I'm thinking that if you're a king or a queen or a noble or like a pharaoh, you probably don't have any, like you're not getting that much exercise as compared to your average serf or peasant or whatever who's like out in the sun working the fields. Like, you're a pharaoh, dog. Like, you sit around all day and like eat whatever you want and don't do anything. Like, you snap your fingers, people come and fucking, like, I don't know, give you whatever you want, basically. Right? Like, of course you're gonna, not be healthy. That's number one. Okay, so like that's what I would consider to be maybe an alternate explanation, as opposed to like, oh, well, homie didn't eat potatoes, like therefore he's like sick. That said, he's kind of like mixing in like things that are actually good recommendations. Like, basically what he's saying, he's presenting these facts, right? And he's drawing, but the problem is that he's drawing conclusions that are not really proven by the facts, is what I'm saying. He's saying like this fact, conclusion, which is actually an argument, if that makes sense. Like, is it true? Maybe, but not actually, like from his premises, right? If you want to get nitpicky about it. Okay, now that said, like, what he is saying that's good is like, he's saying, what did he say? People got fat and sick and these are like, I think like close to the exact words that he said, when people started getting fat and sick when they deviated from their diet of rice and potatoes and corn, something like that, right? And that's true. Yeah, that's true. But did they deviate? Like, is that because they deviated to meat, like actual meat, and they got sick because of that? Or, homie, like, is it because they deviated to processed food, like fake food made in a laboratory? Like, he didn't mention that part, right? And that's, I think, the danger of arguments like this, which is that they will, and this is, again, like, not to pick on vegans or anything, but this is kind of a problem with, like, vegans. What they do is they'll say, well, actually, like, fact, therefore conclusion, right? And it's like, like, is that really the conclusion based on the fact? Like, the facts, I guess, check out, but like, what about these other variables that you're not mentioning, right? You're so like focused on like winning the argument on points, kind of similar to what he's doing, that you don't really like consider what else these things could mean. And then I guess he's going to talk about like childhood obesity. Let's get into that a little bit.
They have arthritis. They suffer precocious puberty. Little boys are going through puberty at age 9. Little girls around age 8.
Okay, so I talked about this in another video, the whole puberty thing. Now I can talk about the puberty for girls, because that's what I mentioned in the other video. I'm not sure about boys. Like, I know nothing about that, right? But this was in the Patrick Baboumian video where he talks about soy. Okay, it wasn't actually Patrick who was saying this. He like used a clip of another doctor who promotes a vegan lifestyle, and basically the studies were saying that high meat consumption of between 3 and 7-year-olds in, I think, the UK is correlated with early onset puberty in females. Okay, and it's like, okay, so that statistic in and of itself would potentially be used, let's say, by a vegan in an argument to draw the conclusion that meat is bad for you, right? Well, actually, did you know meat causes like early onset puberty and blah blah blah? And it's like, and what was funny about this is that, well, actually, I'm not sure if it was this study that said that, but anyway, here's the point. Like, if you think about it, what kind of meat are 3 to 7-year-olds in the UK, let's say, likely to eat? Okay, are they eating like good cuts of like lean meat, like clean food? They're probably eating like fucking Happy Meals and like chicken tenders and like all this like processed nasty shit, like Lunchables and like God knows like the version of that in the UK that they have. Okay, and who's eating those? Okay, so that in and of itself, they're not doing themselves any favors, right? Number one. Number two, okay, and like when I say they're not doing themselves any favors, you could make the argument that this like non-nutritious food is somehow interfering with their hormones and like giving them like developmental abnormalities, like when they're around the age when they're going through puberty. Okay, that's number one. Number two, what socioeconomic level of people are likely to eat cheap fast food meat? Okay, and by the way, like spoiler alert, poor people, right? So poor people likely to eat this like cheap fast food meat, which has a ton of like, that you don't just get the burger, you get the fries, you get the Coke, you get the ice cream, you know what I mean? So that's number one. All right, and all of that stuff is eaten with the meat, which is the main course essentially of the meal. So what do we have here? We have people who are like on a lower socioeconomic level eating tons of like shitty processed food along with meat. Okay, meat is in that Venn diagram, right? And the point of all of this is that girls, early onset puberty has been correlated with the father of these girls not being present in the house. Okay, and like quick aside is you could, like, who knows really why, but just me thinking is like, let's say 1,000 years ago, if you were a warrior and you let's say all the men in your village were killed from like an invading tribe or something. This happened 1,000 years ago. I don't know, whatever. Some country invaded you, killed all the men in your country. There's no men around, right? Like the females who developed sexually at a younger age, because they like biologically like realized that they needed a strong man around, because there was no feminism back then. There was none of this like equal rights bullshit, not bullshit, but like there was no equal rights, So the ones who developed those sexual traits early and developed were selected for evolutionarily, right? And the ones, like, if you have your dad around now, like you don't need to find a man, you know what I mean? Because your dad's there, right? And your dad is the man, you know what I mean? So like all of that shit, like who's going to explain that in a TED Talk? Like my TED Talk would be like 2 hours if I had to do one, because I got to explain all this shit, you know what I mean? But when you present these like basic facts to people, they're not going to they don't think in with such nuance normally, it takes like somebody to like break it down like this and like blah 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 until they're like red in the face.
That's 5-6 years before intended. We have a society of sick children. Now come on, civilized people don't let children be hurt, but somehow we do in our society. Somehow it's okay for the kids to be sick. Well, it's not okay. People should rise up to the occasion and protect our children. How about our soldiers? Yeah, our soldiers are sick. We send our men and women across the world to represent us and to keep us safe, and yet half the soldiers are overweight, and underneath that obesity is a lot of sickness. What kind of society tolerates men and women who fight in our defense, tolerates them being ill because of the rich Western diet, feeds them a diet of kings and queens? Makes no sense at all. How about our businesses? We're competing in a world market, and our fats. How do we compete with people in Japan who live on starch-based diets, or China or India? Oh, I know how we compete. We just wait till switch to the American diet and get fat and sick, right? No, I think there's a better way. We can work hard to get our employees healthy. How about the healthcare system, where 20% of our gross national product is expected to be spent on illness? How can we ever get ahead? How can we solve the deficit? How can we fix this world?
Oh my God, this is so bad. Okay, so again, like I said, I mentioned earlier, I'm getting a very like salesman vibe from this, okay? And okay, we're all trying to make money, everyone's trying to sell their shit, but like, listen, like, okay, so have you guys seen the clip in Family Guy where like Lois is like running for mayor or something? Like, whatever, if you've never seen Family Guy, like, I don't know what to tell you, but like, this woman is running for mayor in some town, whatever, Lois is running for mayor in the town, and like, she gets up on stage, and I think she's having a conversation with the dog, and he's like, just talk about 9/11, And she goes, she gets onto like the podium, and she's like, blah blah blah, 9/11. And as soon as she says 9/11, like people start clapping, like, yeah, woo, 9/11, yeah, like, and she does it like 3 or 4 more times, which is the joke. Like, she's like, and then like later on, like the 3rd or 4th time, she doesn't even say anything relevant to the campaign. She's just like 9/11, and like people are like going crazy about this like 9/11 stuff. And the joke is that like, okay, in the political political speeches, they just pay lip service in these like short phrases that are meant to kind of, I hate saying trigger, but like elicit a response from people based on what these thoughts and therefore emotions are kind of drawn to the surface as a result of the words they're speaking. Such a like roundabout way of explaining it, but basically, like, for example, okay, what am I even saying? If I say to you, such a random, like, an intense example. Sorry if I trigger you, like, weak humans of YouTube. But if I say, like, so random, like, Hitler and his identical twin having sex with a horse. Random. Like, two Hitlers having sex with a horse. What do you think in your mind? You're like, picture it in your mind. You know what I mean? And when you picture it in your mind as a result of the words that I spoke, you're going to think certain things. You're thinking, okay, Hitler, the mustache and like the Nazi uniform and like the horse and the like bestiality. There's like a lot there that just as a result of me speaking these words to you, I've like immediately and instantly made you think certain thoughts. Like, I essentially like have control over your mind because of some random ass shit that I just said. Okay. Which, you know, I don't want to give away all my secrets, but that's like, once you learn these like little tricks, it becomes very fun to speak. Okay. But anyway, I'll make another video about that some other time when I have more subscribers. But anyway, yeah. So like this guy, what is he saying? He's like, what about our children? You know, like, you don't hate children, do you? What about our soldiers? You're a patriot, aren't you? What else he say? Like, we don't want to lose jobs to Japan, do we? And, like, dog, I've been to Japan. We're in no danger of losing jobs to Japan. Like, it's not going to happen, bro. They're not with it. Like, sorry, Japan, but you're in the 90s. Like, you're not even close. But he's playing on all this stuff because he's like, okay, thinking to himself, like, well, I want to appeal to the parents, so I'll talk about children. I want to appeal to patriots, like conservative people, so I'll say like the soldiers, right? I want to appeal to like business people, so I'll say like losing jobs or whatever. And then what he's talking about now, healthcare. He's like, well, I want to also appeal to like liberals and like poor people. No offense to like any of you, but like I want to appeal to like, you know, what I'm trying to say here, like people who like think they deserve healthcare for free. Another issue entirely. So like I have to talk about the healthcare system. It's like, it's very like, are you fooled by this? Like, are people fooled by this? Like, I guess they have other things that are so important to think about that they can't analyze this and see it for what it is. I don't know.
When we have a world where people look and feel and function like kings and queens, the solution is simple, but it doesn't favor business. That's the problem. We have a celebration here. George McGovern, Senator George McGovern, died last month, October 21st, 2012. George McGovern was essentially the author of the Dietary Goals of the United States, which were published in January of 1977. These goals were to be similar to the Surgeon General's report of 1964. The Surgeon General's report of 1964 changed America, changed the Western world. Back then in the 70s, today fewer than 20% of people smoke. Back in the 70s, obesity was half of what it is today. Diabetes was half of what it is today. Industry has won. Americans have lost. But we have an option to change that by becoming informed about what the human being eats. The human being is a starch eater. All of you out there that are suffering, your families are suffering, and you're looking to modern medicine for a solution, stop looking. They're not going to cure dietary diseases with a pill or a surgery. You are going to fix dietary diseases by fixing the problem, which is the food. And when you fix the food, what happens is people get healthy. You as individuals sick with various diseases, communities, countries, and the world can't get healthy by making a simple change back to a starch-based diet. And I believe it will make economic sense to health the country. I believe it's worth doing. Now, I know a lot of you who are new to this, you think about changing your diet.
Oh, so like I'm sorry I'm stopping this so much, but he's loaded, and like it's a TEDx talk, so like you have to keep it short basically, and as a result you have to like jam a bunch of like concepts in there. Like what he's saying is not wrong, you know, like modern medicine is not going to like cure your fucking shitty health disease with a pill or surgery. That's true. He's right. It's about the food. That's true. He's right. But like, again, this is like what I said earlier. He's like stating these facts or premises of his argument, and his like conclusion to the argument is just to me a large jump. Okay. And again, I haven't heard specifically like what he recommends, like what starches in what amounts. I don't know if he's totally anti-meat and like totally anti-dairy. But like, again, this is, and I'm starting to say this in pretty much every video, but when you have somebody who derives their livelihood from their recommendations in terms of health, right? Like you're selling your book, you're selling your diet program, you're selling your like fitness program, it's very hard for you to consciously like admit that there are other methods to achieving the same goal, or that you might actually be wrong, or that your way might not be the best way. Okay, like Dog's been in the game for 40 years, like pushing, I'm assuming, the same message. Like you can present to him whatever information that you want, that meat is better and starches are bad and like whatever. If it contradicts with what he says, he's not going to admit it ever. Like, why would he? He's going to lose money. He's going to destroy all of the work that he put into it. Does it make him a bad person? I don't necessarily think so. I don't think so, because I do, in this case specifically, I do believe that, and I don't really know, like honestly, but I believe that, I guess it's possible to be healthy on a starch-based diet, depending on what starches you're talking about. And again, like before, I don't remember if I mentioned this, but he is actually recommending to eat natural foods. Like he says, eat rice, eat beans, eat potatoes. Like nobody gets fat from eating fucking rice and beans. Like you're not gonna get fat from eating fucking potatoes. Like you will get fat from eating potato chips, or like your like lentil pasta, which is like processed shit. You know, that's what will make you fat, right?
When somebody says to you, well, you have to give up meat. You have to give up dairy, your ice cream, your cheese, your chicken, your steaks. You say, I'm going to starve to death. That's like asking me to give up breathing, or asking me to give up drinking water. You think it's an impossible task. That's because you've been faced with a serious untruth about starches. You love starch, I know you do. When I mention rice and beans, you have a very positive reaction. If I mention pasta, you say, well, that's comfort food. Potatoes, I was raised in the Midwest. If it wasn't for mashed potatoes, I wouldn't be here today. So when somebody says you must give up meat and dairy, and they fail to finish the sentence, what you need to do instead is you need to live on starch, on oatmeal for breakfast, hash brown potatoes. For lunch, you need to have bean soup, pea soup, lentil soup. For dinner, you have bean burritos, pasta marinara sauce, mushu vegetables, and rice. You say, I can do that. Well, of course, you love those foods. This is the kind of education that we need. We need a new dietary goals for the United States. We need a government that will stand up and tell the truth to the people. We need a society that will not tolerate uncivilized behavior, like letting our children be sick and our military be sick and our poor people be sick and our workers be sick because of the diet of kings and queens. And once we know that, we can change it, can't we? We can make a difference. Thank you very much.
I don't want to say anything bad about this guy, because I remember watching him in that health class and having I think he was talking about exercise at that point, and like he said things that like made sense about exercise, and I was like, this guy knows his shit. And he was like old back then, you know, but like, oh my god, fucking like I could just get like a slimy like vibe from him. So however, I will say that like what he said, you know, when he's talking about like giving up meat and dairy, I think the problem is that when people are talking about like nutrition and dietary advice and stuff like that, they're not specific enough in like what you actually need to give up, right? Like what he should have said is you need to stop eating, like, okay, he said meat and dairy, right? Like meat, which is like this huge category of things, right, that people consider meat, and dairy, like another like huge category, right? Like in America, they think like what you consider cheese in America is not like real cheese, right? You hear this a lot from like Europeans who, you know, have been to America, and they like a lot, mostly French people, like talk shit about American cheese, which is 100% warranted in my opinion. Like you're like shredded cheese in a bag, or like, God forbid, you're like slices of American cheese. Really, any cheese you buy in the store that's not like actual cheese is like, makes me like I turn green when I look at that, or I think about eating that. Nobody should be eating that, okay? But that's dairy, right? Now, unfortunately, what is also in the category of dairy is raw milk, and actually like raw cheese and raw yogurt and like kefir. All of those things are good, right, if you eat them, but they're not really commercially available. Raw milk is illegal in most places, which, not to get into like a conspiracy theory, but like, do you understand how much the machines that like are responsible for pasteurization cost? They're very expensive. It's like it's a big lobby, right? So like, and if all of a sudden people start drinking raw milk, you know, you don't need to pasteurize milk anymore. And like, okay, there are some benefits to pasteurizing milk, like keeps it fresher for like massive populations, blah, blah, blah. But like, does that mean raw milk needs to be illegal? I don't think so. But anyway, the point is that like there are some extremely healthy things that are considered dairy as well as meat that unfortunately are getting lumped into these two categories and like baby thrown out with the bathwater. What he should have said is like, stop eating fast food. Okay, like your McDonald's hamburger is not meat. Okay, your like milkshake is not dairy. Your milk that you buy at the store is not dairy. You should not be eating those things. Those are bad. And he said for breakfast you should eat, what do you say, like oatmeal and hash browns. I guess hash browns are okay. Like it's like potatoes like fried in oil. Not the best, but like at least it's a potato. Oh my God, it's like you're cutting up a potato and frying it in some oil. Okay, fine, but like use olive oil or like actual oil, not like canola oil or vegetable oil. I'm sorry, like what oil? What type of oil is vegetable oil? Like what vegetable like is that, right? That's millions of times better than like your sausage McMuffin from McDonald's. And eat, what do you say for lunch? Like pasta marinara. Like I don't know. I don't know how you recommend pasta. Like I think you kind of just threw that in there to like appeal to people who are like, well, I don't want to give up my pasta. I like pasta. Well, they also say like beans and rice, like mushu vegetable. Yeah, mushu vegetable. I wouldn't say mushu pork. Those are real foods, is what I'm saying. Like those are actual foods that can be made by hand. Like I guess you can make pasta by hand. Nobody does, but I guess you can. Like that's 90 bazillion times better than what most people eat, which is mainly processed foods. Okay, so like, fuck, this like wore me out. What do I think about the Mcdougal diet? It's one of these things that's like, if you're wondering if this is healthy, for you it's healthy, basically. Like if you're like, I wonder if this is healthy, I don't know, please give me your opinion, random like YouTuber. For you, yes, like do what this guy says. Why? Because you don't know anything. Like no offense, like I don't want to like jump down your throat. Like I'm sure you're a nice person, and to be fair, if I recall, you're like asking for me for my opinion, probably because you don't think it's healthy, not because like you're clueless, is what I'm like, let's clarify that. But if somebody were to watch this video on their own, not my video, his video, and they're like, well, it sounds like it makes sense, should I do it? Yes, you should, because if you listen to what he's recommending, he's basically like, the main takeaway that I get is eat natural foods, like eat rice, eat beans, eat vegetables. Okay, pasta not great, but like fine, like I'll take 4 out of 5 is not bad. Okay, and don't eat foods that are, I guess, commercially available in the West, which I'm assuming what he's referring to is processed foods. The guy, like honestly getting super slimy vibe from him. I know he wants to sell his shit. I know he's like very polished, like professional speaker, but like he looks like, I don't know, is that unfair of me to judge him like that? I'm not really sure. Anyway, that's my opinion on Mr. Mcdougal. If you guys have any other recommendations for videos or YouTubers you want me to take a look at, let me know in a comment. Peace.